All right, we're live. I'm surprised that we're not sitting here talking about the first dominoes not falling being Padre or Coleman or
No.
friggin' Braden Pahal, but all of a sudden it snowballed here in the last few hours,
Few hours. Mhm.
and Mackenzie Weegar is out the door in Calgary. I still can't believe it.
Yeah.
Let's break it down. So
Mhm.
about 3 or 4 hours ago, it was known that Uyghur was presented with the offer by Craig Conroy. He clearly had his no move, and we knew about this as well. You go in, you have some time to sit down, chat with the wife, see how it goes. And ultimately, in what I thought was going to take at least all night, I did not think we were going to hear anything tonight personally because it's a big decision. Uyghur moved it. He waived his no move clause and is now heading to Utah. So the package being Oli Mata coming back the other way, prospect Jonathan Castagna, and I think the biggest part of the trade here, three of this year's 2026 second round picks. It's unbelievable. I think I don't think Craig would have done this if he knew something, right? He knew
Mhm.
that they're getting this big of a return here. Now, I think for those wondering why isn't this a first round? Why wasn't there a first round pick involved? Well, one of the second round picks is the New York Rangers. And depending how far they fall in the lottery, that pick's going to be anywhere between 33 and 36
Mhm.
take. So it's as close enough to a first round pick as you're going to get here.
Right.
Um, Calgary keeping, I believe Calgary has their own, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So they have their own.
Yep.
They also have Ottawa's,
Mhm.
and they also now have Utah's. And if Utah doesn't go far, that pick falls in the, I believe, late 40s, early 50s.
Correct.
So what? So I haven't even looked yet because I'm still frazzled.
Sure.
What was Mata's contract left? Because you have obviously the cap floor, which they wanted to respect. Because Utah had to make it work and had to ship something out in return. So I think Mata has I think a year or two left on the deal, if I'm not
He
mistaken.
so after this year, he'll have 2 years left on his contract that he just signed this past offseason at three
Okay.
and a half million AAV. So honestly, not that bad.
Honestly, something you can flip too. I like whatever. If you want to flip it at some point, they can. So
Yeah.
okay. I want your initial reaction. Uyghur, all of a sudden, his days in Calgary are done.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about, on Monday, we talked about the different guys that we fully expect to get traded. And we talked about Mackenzie Weegar, and we both agreed that, we're hearing things, but I think it's unlikely. And clearly, where there was smoke, there was fire. And, you know, I think that if you asked me a week ago, or I think if you even asked me yesterday, is Uyghur going? I would have said no. We knew that Utah was trying to be big players in something, right? We had heard that they wanted to go. I don't know if you would call it big game hunting. I guess that might be the best term to put.
Sure.
They get a guy in Uyghur who has several years left on his deal. He's a very, very solid top four defenseman, and they certainly upgraded from what they had. And that I think was a way for Utah to kind of reward their fans and the team that obviously they're competing for a playoff spot and trying to get in the playoffs the first time in Utah Mammoth franchise history. But I can't believe that it actually happened. And now that it's happened and Uyghur approved it, I'm not that upset about it. Because of the fact that Ali Mata comes back the other way, so we do still have a veteran defenseman on the books for another 2 years after this year. So that's something to take in mind. Jonathan Costanza, who was a Utah Mammoth third round pick in 2023. So that was when they
Okay.
were still the Arizona Coyotes.
Okay.
This year in just 29 games, Kyle,
Mm.
14 goals, 18 assists, 32 points. keep in mind, goals, assists, and points and shots are all career highs in his third year at at Cornell University. So he's actually having a very, very solid year playing for the Big Red.
Yeah.
Couple other details really quick. 6'2", so he's a pretty big kid, 198 pounds from, I'm going to definitely botch this name, Etobicoke, Ontario.
Oh,
I
it's
know.
Etobicoke. That's
It
okay.
shows you how American I am.
That's okay.
But
And he's a
3 second
what's
round
the position?
picks.
Sorry, what's the position?
John Costanza, he's just a forward. I think he's a winger,
Okay.
or maybe a center. I'm not sure. Or he does
So
both, or he could play both.
I think the biggest thing in this, like, I mean, yeah, it's nice you get Olimata back because I think at least like you're having a guy who, you know, he's got some presence a little bit too in deep playoff runs and a couple of deep playoff runs, frankly, as well, winning a cup. You know, you have a placeholder essentially for the next
Correct.
2 years. And, you know, if you decide that, hey, next year, if there's something that he's fishing for and, you know, next year, the year after, whatever it might be, you know, I think he's also a guy, though, I don't hate it in the sense that you can kind of place him wherever in this lineup, right? You can go in the first, second, or third deep here, right? And you're really going to give the chance now to these young guys, right? I think that's the biggest thing that speaks in all of this. All eyes are now pointing towards Zane Parekh, right? Who would have thought in the span of, 2 months that both Anderson and Weegar are gone? I can't believe that.
We knew, but here's the thing. We knew about Anderson. We knew that was just a foregone conclusion that he was going to get moved. But Weegar is the one that surprises us all. And honestly, I think Craig Conroy did about as well as he could have done with
and
this.
Don't forget, too, Kadri's still on the board.
He's still there.
And for those people complaining about not getting a first-round pick,
dude,
bro, you can easily get one for Kadri.
And you think about some of the moves that we've seen just today, right? And the values that these guys are getting in a buyer's market. I mean,
man, you know, I cannot believe, like, good for you. I think if you're looking at Utah, good for Utah. Absolutely.
I think
funny how this happens though, and Weegar, who hasn't really had a good year, I don't think it's a huge fall on his own. I think the team's terrible, right?
Sure.
But man, it just the 3 second-round picks. This team now, if all goes according to plan here, Vegas is still falling down. You got to see what the lottery does for Calgary. They're going to have 2 first-round picks and 3 second-rounders.
They could.
How crazy is that?
They could turn this upcoming draft into the draft that that really can begin that like new era for the Flames, right? And I think that's really exciting. I'm really curious to see what else Craig Conroy has in store, because again, like you said, we still have Kadri. Blake Coleman is still available.
Yeah.
And we're talking about guys that have term. Like, this is not like we're just giving them up because they're, you know, soon to be unrestricted free agents. These are guys that have term. And I'm even looking at what the Sabres gave up for Colton Parayko. And I'm going, dude, the Flames can get so much if they play this right. They can get so much just for Kadri. And that is like, holy smokes. You know what I mean?
I was surprised because I don't know if Parayko's call has been gone through. I don't know if it's still pending or not.
I thought it went through officially, but let me double check on that.
Right, man. Like, for Buffalo to give up a first, and I guess it's a highly touted prospect, if I'm not mistaken, in Mertka.
Correct. Yes, and I will say this: some Sabre fans are not. They're excited about getting Parayko, but I think what they're giving up to get him, it's redeem Mertka and a first. That's what we know so far. That, according to Darren Dreger, this was, again, 4 hours ago, exactly 4 hours ago. That's all we know. So nothing has been finalized yet because Parayko also has a no trade clause. So he can he could deny this and cancel it if he wants to. So,
it's true. He could cancel it, but I mean, I cannot believe he was the first one gone. Like, I know we're talking Anderson's going 2 months ago. I'm purely talking about the deadline here and the plans of
Sure.
the Kadris, the Colemans, and you're like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
so I would imagine. So here's my thought. Here's my thought. Okay. What does it say? I'm going to direct this back to you because I'm very curious what you're thinking about this. What does it say about this year's draft class that makes Conroy go, yep, I want all three of those second round picks, including now you have 6 picks in the first
Yeah.
2 rounds alone. And one
Mhm.
of those could be a top 2, top 3 pick. What does that say for you?
It,
What do you
it
think?
it tells me that the Flames scouting staff has put a lot of time already into this draft class, and they are really, really excited about the prospects of getting some of the guys that they can get. Not just potentially getting, a Gavin McKenna or an Ivan Steinberg, but just the depth, just the kind of guys that this team can get, and the amount of holes that this organization can fill in just the first 2 rounds of this year's draft. I mean,
Right.
Craig Conroy is giving all of us something to be really excited about. And also, isn't it kind of funny? It's funny. Bettman was just in Calgary, yesterday?
Yes.
Looking at everything going on, they're hyping up saying like, oh, it's gonna be a really great arena. And Conroy's already building towards that with some of the, getting people excited about not just the arena, but also some of the guys that we're going to potentially bring into this organization in the next couple of years. It's like it's all coming together.
It feels that way, right? Especially with, you know, down the pipeline defensively, I think there's a lot of guys who are now going to be given an opportunity. And I think the guys in the AHL too are probably looking at this going, all right, like we're going to wait a couple more days and let's see what this team looks like because they're going to get their shot as well too.
Yeah.
So um, I I think Craig, I agree. I think they're looking at this new arena coming in, going, yeah, no, we want to look good for this, and
Right.
that puts a huge that's huge moving forward here, right? I think
And also,
again, go ahead, yeah,
I was just going to say another thing. We've talked about ownership, right? We've talked about the people above Craig Conroy. I don't think that I don't think at all that Craig Conroy would have made these moves or made this move if he didn't get the full bit of confidence from from the rest of the people. And that
sure,
tells you something too. That I
sure,
think that maybe the organization is actually okay with getting a lot of these assets and building towards that future in the next 2 or 3 years with the new arena, a new young core. I mean, the possibilities
it's
could be endless here.
that's the thing. Like when you think about now, like what I'm so fascinated by these second round picks, okay, is the
Yeah.
fact that not only does Calgary have their own, right? If
Mhm.
I'm not, can you look on cap friendly? Just I'm
Let
fairly
me
certain
take
that
a
they do.
look at what the Flames have now
Fairly
in terms.
certain that they do. Um,
I think
the
Puckpedia
Rangers,
might have it
like
updated. Let me
the
double check.
Rangers' second round pick is now Calgary's. So there's a possibility where Calgary gets back to back second round picks right
Yes.
at the
All right.
top of the order,
All
right?
right. Nope, that's not the right thing I wanted. I
And
where are
and
we?
Ottawa's too is what's
Oh, here we go.
unbelievable.
This is great. Okay, so here's okay. So this is I'm just going to talk about next year. Well,
Okay,
this upcoming draft. The
this
Flames
draft, yeah.
have their own first. Yeah, they have their own first, and Vegas's own first. So they have two
Mhm.
firsts. Then they have the Rangers' first, second round pick, their own second round pick, Ottawa's second round pick, and now Utah. And also, Kyle, you forgot to mention this. They have multiple third round picks as well. They have their own, and they have Vancouver's as well. And think about where Vancouver is going to finish this year.
That yeah, true because they'll be right.
You're
They'll
talking about what? Low 60s, early 70s pick for was
back to back in the order as
back to
well
back right
too.
there. I
That's
mean,
that's crazy. So you
yeah,
have 8 picks in the first 3 rounds, and when you're looking at the third round, it's probably 2 in the top 5, right?
yeah,
And when you
yeah,
look at Ottawa's kind of that middle of the pack, so you're going to get a middle of the pack second round pick. And now
Mhm.
we're all going to watch what Utah does this year. And I'm telling you, I've got a sneaky feeling here too with this addition because I think Utah might be thinking what I'm going to say here. With that Pacific Division being as bad as it is, and if
Mhm.
they're in the top wild card spot, because I don't think they're going to be able to catch the third place team in, I believe it's Minnesota,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Minnesota. Yeah, you're back
Minnesota.
by 12. You're back by 14 points,
Mhm.
and they're fighting right now actually with Edmonton for the top wild card. So
Correct.
Utah can just go for a top wild card and go. We could probably get through the Pacific.
I
The
think
way
they have
it's,
every. I think they have the ability to do so.
they absolutely do. Um, so yeah, I mean, in terms of talking about the assets, we talked quickly about Mata. You went through the prospect. We talked about the picks. Let's
Yeah.
talk about Weegar.
ESPN, funny enough, because I have the Devils game
Yeah,
on
yeah.
in the Leafs. They're actually going to talk about in the second intermission. They're going to talk about the Uyghur deal here in
Deal.
5 days. Yep.
Let's
Anyway,
talk about Weegar.
yeah.
Third year of an 8-year deal at 6.5 million. That he actually signed after that trade with Chuck all those years ago.
hmm
Um, around the same time as when Jonathan Huberdeau signed that deal too.
Correct.
Um, it's kind of sad at the end of the day. It's business, and I think I think about when he was putting on the hard hat and the constructors outfit because he was getting ready, like, wow, like this arena is going to be amazing. And for him not to be able to be a part of that, really sucks. I think
Yeah.
from a personable, emotional standpoint, it
hmm
sucks. It sucks not being able to have him stick around for that because I how many times have I said it where he's one guy I probably wouldn't touch because you got to have some sort of leader, and all of us were probably at some point some of us were saying that he was going to be the captain of this team.
hmm
And you know I'm just what I think, what I want to know, because I love everything about Uyghur, and I think it sucks because he loved Calgary, he loved being here. The one question I would probably want to know from Craig is why. Like I understand the why. I wonder, like, how am I trying to phrase this? I'm not talking about the deal itself. I get it's an appetizing deal here.
hmm
Why now? Why when he has 5 years left on his deal, right?
Yeah.
Was well respected in the locker room, looked at as one of the leaders, and you kind of turn heads on a lot of guys going, "Whoa!" Like I think I don't care about the deal. I want to
hmm
know that. I want to know why now. Why is it so important to do this now? And is it because of those picks? Is it because that they are looking forward to 2028? Like
hmm
I don't know. I'm curious. I'm very curious to see what Craig Conroy is going to say.
I think it came down to. I think Conroy has been listening to offers on basically anybody that's been asked about. Um, and I think with Uyghur, I think it came down to the simple fact that it's like the quote in The Godfather. They made an offer that they can't refuse,
Right.
essentially.
Right.
And I think that that's what ultimately came down to. I think that Conroy didn't go into this with the intention of moving Uyghur. I think it just happened that way and happened with a situation where he looks at again that this upcoming draft class and says, we have a chance to get a huge load of picks here that could really help us in the future with getting some more of these really talented young players. But we have to sacrifice a guy that we weren't even necessarily looking to try to move. And ultimately, I think Craig Conroy was very transparent about this with Weegar. It'll be interesting to see what Weegar says the first time he talks to the Utah media, if they ask him about how it all came about.
No kidding.
I think that there was definitely, a conversation. And I think that it was probably an honest one where Conroy told Weegar, look, um, this is an offer that we have to go to Utah, for you to go to Utah, and we want to know what your thoughts are. And I think Uyghur understood that, this team's going to struggle for another couple years right? And he goes to a Utah team that's closer, I think, at this point to to contending than the Flames are. I mean, you look at what the Mammoth have done this year, and the young players that they have, and the talent, and also the way they've drafted and developed. Right, like we got to give them a lot of
Right.
credit for what
Absolutely.
we've
Yeah.
seen. I think ultimately it just comes down to essentially that Conroy got an offer that he could not refuse, and Weegar. It's kind of surprising how quickly Weegar looked at that deal and was like, "Yeah, I'm okay with it." I'm sure he talked to his wife. I'm sure he talked to his family.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately he gets an
I
opportunity to go to a new hockey market and be kind of like a guy, be like a top guy for Utah on a contending team. And, it sucks. It's part of the business. But
it
I think
is.
ultimately down the road, if the Flames do this right, I think it's going to work out in the long term.
I agree. Like, I agree with the part too where it was such a short conversation.
Yep.
Like for it to go like what he had, I think all of 2 hours, 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm surprised that the conversation didn't take long, right? And I think you're right. I think it does lead to a point where he definitely sees it. He knows he has to have known too this year that his game has not been his A-plus game, right?
Mm-hmm.
He knows with all the things that has happened, even especially with Anderson going, right? He
Yep.
had to have known at a certain point that this team probably won't contend for next year, the year after that. Who knows, right? We don't know what it's going to look like.
Yep.
So maybe that's probably why it wasn't a long conversation, right? You sit
Yep.
there with the wife and go, I need to hit the reset button, I think, right?
Right.
I'm not, and listen, as much as people were bashing him, frankly, on social media about his game for the last couple of weeks here, look at the team he's got, right? That
Yeah.
he's playing
Look,
around here.
how about just look at
Like,
last night as a prime
last
example?
night alone, right? That was a great example, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, like emotionally, on an emotional standpoint, it sucks. It hurts a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once that's over with, it's honestly a really solid work, I think, from Craig at the end of the day. I think it's also really solid work from Utah. So again, I'm looking at this trade thinking it's going to be very successful for both sides. I think Utah, along with Sergachev now, like you've got Mackenzie Weegar, I think they're loading up for a playoff run because
John
they
Marino as well.
John
And that's
Marino, yep.
second. Yep.
You're
Mm-hmm.
loading up now, and if you can find a way to get that top wild card spot, all of a sudden your path is going to be a lot different going through the Pacific Division,
Yeah.
and you got to give them a really good chance to
Yeah.
find their way through. So, for Utah, I'm not surprised they went big game hunting. I think they're still going to go big game hunting as well too. Keeping that first round
Yeah.
pick, they've talked about Robert Thomas a little bit. It's a really solid deal from Utah's standpoint. In order to get a guy like Weegar. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about the grades afterwards, but go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, Utah is trying to take that next step. And I think that this shows it. I think also, I kind of wondered to myself if Utah was ever really in on trying to get Colton Parayko, or if they had their eyes set on Mackenzie Weegar. Because I mean, Parayko has, was talked about being available. Weegar only in the last week was talked about. Dougie Hamilton's been a name that has been thrown out for essentially months now.
Yeah,
Those are just some names that, in terms of big game defensemen, and I think that I wondered to myself if Utah was the only team that made an offer. Maybe they weren't, but they
maybe
certainly made the best one, because
it's possible
I don't think you're gonna top what ultimately they get. Calgary gets at the end of the day. I'm
for sure.
curious to see what else Utah's got in the next day and a half. Essentially, you talked about Robert Thomas. It just makes so much sense to me for him to go there, because if
Yeah,
you walk out of this deadline, if you're Utah, you walk out of this deadline getting Mackenzie Weegar and Robert Thomas to add on to what you already have. I mean, you got to make the playoffs. There's no excuse.
they
There is
will.
that.
They absolutely will. My concern for them is still goaltending. I think you're going to hang your hat on Vajelkma and go, okay, we'll see what
Right,
happens. Um,
right.
so in terms of grades here, Let's start with Utah while we're on them.
I
I probably like. Here's the thing. I'm curious how going forward, what this is going to look like for like how his play is going to be moving forward,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Because that's the biggest thing, right? He hasn't played well this year,
Sure.
and now all of a sudden he's got to translate. You got a month and a half here to regroup. You're probably going to the playoffs, new team, new city, and all that. Um, yeah, I think for Utah, I would probably give it a solid A minus.
Mhm.
And the minus part, just because I just want to see how Uyghur is for the first 2 months here. I think that's a big
Sure.
factor. And then on the Calgary standpoint, I don't think you can judge too early because it's a lot of assets that you have. But initially, I'm probably going to give it a solid B plus. Um,
Hmm.
I'm maybe thinking about a different prospect. I like the idea. I'm getting more liking to the idea of bringing Mata in and him being a placeholder, and you can kind of see where he fits around the lineup, get different
Yeah.
guys to play with him a little bit because he's very versatile. So I like that.
Mhm.
Um, but again, the reason why it's up so high is like, God, you have those 3 second-round picks that are going to be so much to play with coming up here. You got 8 picks in the top 46, excuse me, the 64, 46. Top 64 in the draft coming up. You have 8 picks.
Mhm.
That's a lot to play with. So, what are your grades? What do you think?
I'll agree with you on Utah. I'm going to give them an A minus because I think that they did about as well as I think they could have done trying to get a guy like Uyghur. I am curious to see how he fits on that team. Maybe it's an immediate fit. Maybe it takes some time to get going. I mean, we always talk about it like it's really hard for players to go from being traded at the deadline to trying to build chemistry within a month and a half, before the playoffs, come around. Um, so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. Again, I am excited for Utah's perspective about what this means for not just their back end, but what does this mean for this organization moving forward? I'm going to bump it up a bit um, for the Flames. I'm going to give them an A minus on this because of the fact that you got multiple second round picks. You now have multiple picks in the first 3 rounds of this upcoming draft. And you essentially control a lot of people's futures over the next couple of years with what you can do. And I'll also just say this: just because you have this many picks doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to use all of them to draft somebody. With the Flames having as much space as they have, cap space, and with the amount of picks that they have, I'm not saying they're going to go out and go crazy. What I am saying, though, is I wonder if they'll look in terms of trades to maybe bring in a young player who has that
Yeah,
major upside that we can go, he can plug into our lineup right away and we're going. That's why I give it A minus because I want to see what Craig Conroy has up his sleeve. And also,
it's a big
again,
brain. Yeah,
what's going to happen with Kadri? What's going to happen with Coleman?
yeah.
What's going to happen? And now we are going to look at Zane Perek and go, "You're the top. You're one of the top guys now.
You're the guy,
You're the
right?
guy. What do
You're
you
the
got?
guy.
And I think I think in a way it's probably exciting him because he knows now he's going to get top minutes and
Yep,
really, really get going. So
yep.
it'll be impressive. And you know what? Trading Weegar, maybe one of the reasons they did it was because they really like what Perek has shown and they like what they got coming up in the next year or two. And maybe they were more
Sure.
comfortable doing that. So, yeah, I'm going to go with A
Yeah,
minus for the Flames. I don't necessarily think, I don't think you could have done better. I think I would rather do this deal than maybe getting just one lone first round pick, in my
sure.
opinion. Um, so yeah,
You
I
bring up a really, really
yeah,
good point, though, and one that I forgot about,
mhm,
right? I'm reading the comments still, and people are still upset about not getting this first round pick.
I got it.
You got a day and a half here, right? Who says you can't go to someone and go, you have opportunity here where you can go look at some prospects now around the league start making some calls saying we got a lot of assets with us here, right? Is it somebody that's not going to get a chance to play in the lineup, right? You can really start to look around these teams all of a sudden, right? And go and kind of pick and choose a little bit, right?
Mhm.
And I think, too, this changes things a little bit for Kadri's move, right?
Yep.
Can you go out there now with these additional picks and get and really entice somebody, right? Like,
Mhm.
as an example, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but
Mhm.
I've talked about Montreal before,
Yep.
and I've talked about Michael Haig, right? I know there's other prospects around there, but hear me out. If for whatever reason Montreal wouldn't want to give him up, like if it was Nazem Kadri straight up, like we're seeing here for Weegar, would a second round pick sweeten the deal? Would another? Would Vegas's first round pick? Who knows?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of different things that you can kind of fiddle around with and play with.
Sure.
And he's got a day and a half, and I'm very because I think this says more about you're right. Like you have a lot of weapons here all of a sudden to do something at the draft, to either trade them to gain more assets,
Mhm.
guys who are ready to go. Could happen in the next day and a half, or you decide to just sit on it and get ready for the future and start making some picks.
Yeah.
It's. I agree. I like that. I didn't even think about that, but
Yeah.
you still got a day and a half left before it's all said and
Yeah.
done. So
And I also just wanna make this one point that I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if they don't use any of those picks and they draft players, because at the end of the day, you still have to draft and you still have to develop, right? And
yep,
at the end of it's just I just bring up that point because you never know what could happen. You never know a move that the Flames make all of a sudden expedites their entire rebuild process. They
right.
get somebody in here and all of a sudden, maybe. I would honestly, Kyle, I would call Boston and I would say, what about James Hagens? Just a thought. Yeah.
And
And I say
but
that,
I get what you're swinging at. Yeah, I
but
got it.
again, with those picks that you have, you would now have another leverage piece to work with here.
It's all
You do.
leverage. Yeah,
And you've set a market by what you just did with Weegar. And I granted Kadri and Coleman, their forwards, this is different. But you look at some of the deals like Jason Dickinson going to Edmonton, 50% retained, by the way. And I say, Jason
whoa,
Dickinson got,
bro,
that much?
and no retention on Weegar either.
No retention either. What is
Not a
that?
bad. Not saying it was a bad deal, but $6.5 million now is off the books.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I think the more you really look into it, the more it's starting to be like they can do a lot of different things with this moving forward. I can't remember a time where the Flames had this much power in assets in an upcoming draft as
oh
well.
yeah.
Like it's a lot of power that they have
This
here.
is a huge amount of control that they have moving forward.
So
Yep. And that's why I said the possibilities could very well be endless. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like there's a lot.
What does it say about your Devils there, buddy?
I mean, what in this game?
Just in general. What's
Oh,
the reaction for you seeing this deal go down going into the deadline?
I think what it tells you is, I mean, first and foremost, you look at some of the other deals that have happened, not just that, but then you look at Tyler Myers getting dealt to Dallas. And I think for the Devils, especially since they so badly want to move Dougie Hamilton, I think it just becomes harder
Right.
because certainly number one, I think the Devils would want something similar to what, Weegar got. Maybe not the exact same because it's different. But I think also that now there's just even fewer teams that are looking for a right shot defenseman with term and with offensive abilities, right? And I think that
Sure.
that's like another value. So it's really interesting to see how it all goes down. Um, the vibes are not. There isn't a lot of confidence, I would say,
Sure.
in terms of who's running the show in New Jersey. Um, but as we know, things could change, right? And we
They
saw it
could.
even today, right? With Toronto, look at the amount of guys that became quickly healthy scratches
Sitting out.
today,
Yeah.
right?
You
Ekman
bet.
Larson's out, McCann's out. I mean, and these are not guys. I mean, they were expected to play tonight, and now they're not. And again, things get changed in an instant. So that's the beauty of this trade deadline. People are going to say that this deadline sucks. I think what people are expecting is for a lot of stuff to happen on Friday, but we are already seeing a lot of stuff happening days before that. And so far, it's been a pretty interesting deadline to see values of certain guys and saying, this is really a buyer's market. Like, we're really at that point. And
we are.
It's really interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing what a lot of teams do over the next day and a half here.
Right.
You know? So,
last question.
Shoot.
Does Kadri hold more value than Weegar?
No. I would say no. And I'll tell you why. Age and contract have a factor.
Okay.
And from what I've been reading, a lot of teams seem to be interested and have a lot of interest in Nazem Kadri, but they're worried about his term, 3 more years after this year, and his age. And they wonder, how many more good years does he have left in the tank? The thing with Kadri, though, is that he's been very productive even in his 30s. Like, he hasn't necessarily shown signs of major decline. And look at the team he's playing with right now, right? And I think that's why, like, Colorado's really interested in him because they've already had him on the roster. They know what he can do and everything. But I think teams are trying, honestly, I think they're trying to force the Flames to retain. And I think Conroy's just not doing it. I think now with this move, when he just traded for Weegar, I think he just made it that much tougher on other teams. I think he's put them in a tougher spot. Not a negative.
Yeah.
I would say Weegar has more value right now.
Interesting. Well, I guess we're going to find out. So, that'll be it. We'll be on the radar here. I'm definitely going live for the deadline on Friday for sure. And I know you'll be joining too.
And we'll have nothing to talk about because everything will happen before Friday.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
All right. Good stuff, buddy. Good reaction. Congrats on Weegar finding a new home and solid return from Craig Conroy. So we'll chat to everybody again on Friday. Unless something else crazy happens tomorrow, then we'll be live for that.
It'll happen in an hour.
And we will recap everything on Monday coming up. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll chat to you again soon.
Later, guys.